morning. Good morning, mujeres. How's everyone doing today? How was your week? Um, how has the last couple weeks been going since I last did my initial live, where I started talking about the three keys to self love, right? Awareness, accountability, and action. How has that been working out for everybody? Did some of those tips help? Was there some understanding? Did you do some processing or reflecting on that? That'd be good to kind of hear about. Share your story. Let's connect on that. Um, I'm going to give it a couple seconds, couple moments here to see if anybody pops up. Again, today I am on Facebook Live as well as I am on Instagram. So if you see me going back and forth, it's because I'm on both platforms. And I want to make sure that if anybody comments that I can look at it and we can talk about it, right? Connect. So I'm going to just chat room. Okay. So today's segment is on the power and freedom of self-love. So it's something that on Topic Thursday last week that I had mentioned that we were going to discuss this week. And I'm interested to know, have you ever felt the power and freedom of self-love? What does that look like? What does that entail? Um, I know I have felt the power and freedom that comes with that, right? And some of you that have been following me sort of know my story. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship in my early years, right? So teenage, 19, going on my early 20s, and not really knowing that I was being emotionally abused. Because when you're that young, you don't really have that concept and frame of thinking at times. You just don't have an understanding of what that looks like or what that is. Um, so when you're in it and you're in the moment and you feel like you're in love, or and at that time, I don't know if it was me being in love versus like, oh, I had a kid, so it's like, let's make this work, right? Because I come from a two-parent home, so for me it was like important. But it wasn't until afterwards, we didn't last long. It was only maybe 2 or 3 years that we were together. And it wasn't until afterwards, until I understood what was going on, and how the constant feeling of not feeling good enough, or not being pretty enough, or not having done enough, when in reality I did way more than what a lot of people my age at that time were doing, right? At that time, people were going club and having fun, doing all these things. And I was at home with the kid trying to work part-time and sometimes full-time, and going full-time school and trying to figure it all out. It was all about home life, just trying to make things work. Um, but it wasn't until after, when I started setting boundaries, when I started just doing what I wanted to do, right? And of course, that was always putting my kid first. If she was away on visitation with the other parent, it was like, okay, cool. Now it's my freedom. It's my time to enjoy. What does that look like for me? And that is where I started coming into my own and understanding, what do I like to do? What is fun to me, right? What is that all about? What does that look like? Um, and that's when I started, exploring. That's still like another level, another transition to an exploration stage. And we go through these transitions in life, and it doesn't matter how old you are, and you continuously go through that transition in life, right? You could be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, going through life transitions, and now it's like, okay, who am I again? And what does that look like? What hobbies do I like to do now? Because it may not look the same as it did before. But here's the thing about gaining that power and freedom of self-love, and understanding what your boundaries look like and what they are. You're not going to take crap from people. And the moment that you feel that you're trying to gaslight me, or I don't like what you just said, and that hurt me, and that was mean. And at that time you're communicative about that. You were saying, yeah, no, I didn't like that. That was actually a mean comment that you said, right? One of my pet peeves are people that are actually petty. I don't like petty people. I don't want to say I don't like petty people. I don't like the act of being petty, right? And I know a lot of people are petty, and it doesn't mean that I'm not petty. I'm just not naturally a revengeful person. I'm actually that type of person that is more apt to just say, all right, and keep it moving, because I can't emotionally, it drains me, right? And I don't know if it drains other people um, whenever somebody's engaging in some like unhealthy, petty behavior. It drains me. I don't have time for that, because that means I have to think about how low I have to stoop. And that's a lot. It's a lot of energy taken from me when I could just be on the next flight doing something, or my next business venture, or whatever it might be or look like. And you ruin relationships being petty. And the moment I realized that petty was, when people are petty, it's an emotional dysregulation. They don't know how to regulate their own emotions, and they've gotten hurt, right? So that hurt feeling turns into a passive aggressive act. And there's levels to that, right? This level of pettiness can be so severe, but people are so invested in being petty that they forget the bigger picture is that there's actually a way that you could communicate these things, right? And it's part of self-love. If I love myself, I'm going to communicate certain things, and I'm going to put it out there. And instead of engaging in these acts, the moment I take note of any type of pettiness, or when someone says something that wasn't malicious, right, has that malicious intent, it's like, yeah, I'm not dealing with that. This is what you said, and that was intended to be malicious. And some people would downright say, yes, it was. Yeah, no, I'm not dealing with that. You can treat people like that if you wish, but me, that's not happening. And being able to walk away and feeling like I'm good. I'm good. There's a freedom to that. I don't feel guilt if I have to walk away from a relationship that the person is intentionally trying to be malicious. It doesn't work for me, right? Because you can over and over try to make that relationship work, and it doesn't work because the person is still who they are. And as long as you are involved with them, or they're with them, they're going to keep doing the same thing, because they haven't changed, they haven't grown, and they think it's okay because, well, you're still here, right? The power and freedom of self-love allows you the ability to walk away from situations that do not serve you. You don't. And you don't feel the guilt associated to that, because you know this is better for you. And if you are in control of your own well-being in your life, what you are saying to yourself is, I'm not allowing that in my life, despite if it's family, despite if it's a loved one, despite if it's a job, right? Because there's just certain things that we cannot allow, that you should not allow. And it as well can be difficult to transition into that. It can be difficult to leave loved ones behind. It can be difficult to set those boundaries with people who have been part of your life for such a long period, because we're creatures of habit. And if we were friends, or if we were together, or if I had this job for such a long period of time, and if I'm someone who doesn't like change, I'm not going to want to change that. it's going to be difficult for me to say no, enough is enough, and walk away. Instead, what people do is actually revert inwardly and start asking themselves, what is wrong with me that this person is treating me this way, right? Why am I continuously going back into this cycle? Am I not good enough for them to change, or them to respect me, or them to treat me differently? It's not about you, it's about them. But we make it about us because we can be egotistical, right? My world, my journey, I'm moving in this path. So anything that crosses my path and impact me, it has to be, the reason why you're treating me this way has to be because of me, right? And in reality is no, you treated me that way. That does not mean that that was because of me. Now, if there's things that you are doing, right? If you are the petty person, if you are the person that is unhealthy and having those toxic behaviors and being disrespectful, then yes, those things are coming to you, right? Those are the things that you have to change, that you have to be aware of. And a lot of times it's because there's this inner battle that you might be having. And that's where you need to grow that self-love for yourself. Do you have to forgive yourself, right? Do you have to show yourself more compassion? It seems very complex at times, but the reality is that when you start really focusing internally on you and what loving yourself means for you and what you need to heal and move forward, you experience that power and freedom of self-love. I walked away recently from a friendship that was maybe like 10, 15 years or something like that because of pettiness. Simple conversation that could have been had, and I know it was a misunderstanding. But when people get so caught up in their own toxic behaviors, you got to kind of step back and say, oh, I see what's going on. I can't engage in that. I can't. So you have to do for the time being if it's related to something, right? If it's related to something, I have no choice to kind of stick around for a little bit of time, then I'll do that. But I'm not like the bystander now, right? I'm only engaging when I have to, and I'm being professional about it, and this is just what it is, right? Because when you opened up that line of communication, there was no line of communication. It was like, nope, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, okay, cool. I know everything's not fine. I'm a therapist. I mean, that probably like some of my friends might be like, oh, can they tell me to take off? Can you not be a therapist? Can I have my friend? And the reality is just, it's not that I try to intentionally be a therapist. It's just, I see things in a different light now. Right. And there's several things that I do question, like, where is that coming from? Right. And then what I actually do is analyze myself. Am I doing something that I'm not being aware of? So this is why I believe in the power of communication as well. The more you communicate, the more you're trying to gain clarity and understanding, the better it can become, because now everything is not a personal attack versus things are, you literally start seeing things, oh, it might be a misunderstanding. When for me, that is that is power and freedom of self-love, because not everything is about me. It's just not, right? And if I if someone feels a certain way because of me, I want to know what that is. And if I'm feeling triggered by it, like in a sense, like if I'm feeling defensive about it, then what is it within me that I'm trying to defend? And I'm trying to answer that. I'm trying to process that and reflect on that, right? Because I don't want my friend to feel like they're not being heard either, when I may have done something to them, whether intentional or not intentional, right? And sometimes we truly do things that are unintended, um, but the other person, again, depending on their past and their trauma, feels like everything's a personal attack, right? So yeah, walking away from that friendship of so many years, I just could no longer do because the level of the pettiness that it became, and that it was. And I just can't stand for things like that. The emotional dysregulation is off the charts, and I just can't. That's a boundary to me, because that tells me there's no limit to where you can go, where you are willing to continue to hurt me. And me being able to walk away after that was just like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. It's okay. Much love. Much love. Because the hope is that that'll change. The hope is that, for me, is that the other person will get the healing that they need to love themselves, and to know that, man, this was just a simple communication. If I would have just seen that from the beginning, then we wouldn't have messed up 10 to 15 years of a friendship. But it is what it is. Then you move on. And you continue to live your life. It doesn't mean that you don't miss people and you're like, damn, I kind of miss those things, but you don't feel the connectedness, and you can never trust that person again, because you're just like, nah, you disrespected me on a whole nother level. That's the power and freedom of self-love, being able to walk away from those who are just not providing that reciprocity of respect, right? Of that reciprocity of saying, hey, let's communicate on this. I'm not feeling up to it today because I'm angry about it, but give it a few days and we'll come back to it, right? And some people just don't have that in them, or they haven't found that in them because they're so invested into their own anger. They're invested into their own trauma and abandonment issues, or rejection, or feeling like they need to hurt people before you hurt them, whatever the case might be. But that's not my business. That's yours. And as long as I love myself, I'm not going to enable you by being there and allowing you to continuously do that. And then there's a big, because that ain't me. I love myself too much for that. And it's not selfish, it's freeing. And when you start feeling that power and that freedom that having that sense of self-love can give and provide, you're able to walk away from things and no longer question, am I good enough? Right? I know I'm good enough. I know my worth. I know my value. And I know this is not serving me. I know this is not reciprocating what I am giving. So therefore, it no longer becomes me questioning myself. It becomes, this just wasn't it for me. This is not the relationship for me, right? Friendship, relationship, connection with your family, whatever it might be, because we live life and we have relationships, all types of relationships. Good morning. So it's just one of those things where the moment you feel that, your ability to let go becomes so much stronger, right? It's not attached to those most vulnerable parts of yourself. Doesn't mean that you don't miss certain things. You're going to, right? Because there's a lot of great memories, but we can't continue investing our time in the great memory that we had X amount of years ago. We're still trying to get that back only because of our fear of change. Don't let fear stop you from moving on to the next great thing. And I work with a lot of people that stop themselves from the next great thing only because they don't know it's coming. And sometimes the uncertainty of life will stop people from moving on to that next great thing. You don't need to know what life is about. Life is a continuous journey. Why do you want to live in a world that everything is the same all the time? Wouldn't that get boring? I don't want that life. I don't want, that world where I know what's coming up each and every time just to make me feel secure, because that is going to get boring. It gets redundant. I wouldn't want that. I kind of like and enjoy life's uncertainties. I'm not saying that life is rainbows and unicorns and things like that, right? It's not like that all the time. And sometimes I'm just like, ain't this a bitch? But what I'm saying is that when you learn how to handle these situations, and even when you don't know what the situation is, then you say, let me see if I can find somebody that knows how to handle this situation. And that is the power of communication. That is the power of letting go and allowing people to help you as well, because I love myself to not punish myself for something that I don't know how to do. And if I'm stuck, I'm not going to keep making myself stuck and digging myself deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole. I'm going to say, who else can I find that might have the resource that I don't have? Right? I don't care if I have to, I haven't been to a library in years, but I don't care if I have to go back to the librarian and be like, do you have a book on this? Right? Google is so accessible. And it's like, now you can Google it. Right? I tell my kid, like back in the day, I had an encyclopedia, A through Z, like you're reading a book. You're trying to find the answer, because Google did not exist until late 90s. I don't even know if it was Google back then. But either way, like you have the answer somewhere. And yes, you have to research and make sure the answer is actually correct, right? Because there's a lot of spam and blah 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 out there. But the reality is that there is no excuse. There is no excuse for not finding some type of resource, because you just have to research and look and ask and not be afraid of ask. I don't care. I'll be the first person at a town hall. Hey, do we know, and do we have something out here? Or listen, I will pick up a phone. I have no problem picking up a phone. That doesn't embarrass me at all. It doesn't cause me anxiety, because for me it's like I need to know answers so I can move on from this part of my life. So I can move on from this obstacle, because I don't want to sit in this forever, because that is not a good feeling. So why do you want to keep punishing yourself and being in that state forever? That doesn't make sense, right? But our sometimes anxiety, our unwillingness to kind of motivate to move forward. Sometimes if you are dealing with a mental illness, sometimes that might hit and that might impact. But those are the things that you get help for, right? Help me maneuver through this portion so I can get through this. But not doing anything at all is going to leave you stuck. And then it's going to leave you, again, questioning yourself all over again. And because you're not doing what you need to be doing to show yourself some love, right? Show yourself that, hey, I'm going to respect myself, and I love myself enough to get myself out of this hole here, right? And when you realize that you can do that, it's empowering. To be honest, I remember the first day that I brought my daughter, I think she was like 3. She's 18 now, so it was a while ago. When I brought my daughter for the first time alone to a beach. I know it sounds silly, but to a beach, right? To me, something about that seemed empowering. Because before that, it was like, oh, I have my little happy family and we're doing this. And before that, I was with my parents. So I didn't really have like this independency, right? So for the first time, I had brought my daughter to a beach, and that felt empowering. The first time I was able to bring my daughter to Disneyland when she was about, I don't know, I can't remember, 7, 8 years, no, 6, 7 years old, something around that time. And luckily, my sister had a friend that lived in Florida, so great, saved me some money there, because we all know Disney is crazy in prices. But the ability to have just done that at the young age I was, and paying for this, was empowering. So watching the fireworks and stuff like that, it's a little embarrassing, but like I teared up because in my head I'm just like, wow, I finally got to do this. Me, right? I paid for our plane tickets. I paid to the tickets for these expensive Disney or whatever it is. And here we are sitting at the, sitting here or standing here watching the fireworks. And I did this. It's a sense of empowerment that no one can take away. That sense of love, that sense of freedom. There's something about it. So can definitely relate. It took me a while to be comfortable taking my daughter out by myself and being comfortable with it. Yeah, that's what somebody just said. Yeah, it takes a minute. But the more you do it, it's this empowerment. It's this inspiration. I don't know. For me, it was like whew, this wave. And then I continuously did it. You couldn't stop me at that time. We went to museums, we went to movies, we did all these things. And forget about just having the child, right? If it's you, there's a sense of, people say, oh, it seems kind of lonely, right? If you go to the movies by yourself, take her on a date or whatever it is, but do it by yourself. There's times that I do those things by myself. Let me go out to a little coffee shop and I'm going to go get ahead and get me some coffee, right? I'm going to go to this paint shop or whatever, and I'm just going to sit here by myself and I'm just going to paint this mug or whatever it is. There's lots of things that I enjoy doing by myself. Obviously, I want to sometimes bring people with me, and I do bring people with me. But the reality is there's just sometimes that I was like, no, I want to do this by myself. I want to do it by myself because there's something to that. When you don't have to connect and feel connected to everyone, sit with it, be with it, love it. Yes, sometimes people feel lonely, but the reality is that there's also a sense of empowerment if you just tune into that and hold on to that feeling, because there's something about it. So I guess what I'd like to leave you all here today is that question is, have you ever felt the power and freedom of self-love? What was that like for you? Was it inspiring? Did it take you a little bit of time to get used to it, right? Did you eventually begin to love it, to own it, right? These are the things that you want to think about in your self-love journey. So I encourage you all to take that one day, 1 hour, 15 minutes to doing something that is solely about you and finding that little sense of freedom, whatever it might be. I don't care if you sit in your driveway with a bag of fast food or whatever it is, and you just like, I'm not going to that house, because the minute I go in that house, people are going to want to beg for my food. Nope. There's a little thing to that, right? Or I'm going to sit in that parking lot. I'm just going to eat what I'm going to eat. I'm going to throw it out. And nobody has to know that I ever had any food and I didn't bring it home. Because, man, everybody want to be taken from you. I just want it for me, is that little sense of power and freedom I'm talking about at times, right? So own it, feel it, acknowledge it, do it, right? So thank you all for joining me here today. I hope this kind of inspired you. Leave comments, share your stories. Let's connect. And in 2 weeks, I'll be back on and we'll talk about the next topic. And if you guys have a topic that you would like for me to go live on, let me know too, because, this is that women's platform, the self-love movement, and we want to be able to connect, share, and just talk about real stuff relating to women. All right. So this is Marianne from Unapologetically. I'll see you guys soon.